I used to think silence was my best armor. Now, as I stand in front of the wall-to-ceiling windows of my downtown Chicago office, the city's rush below looks like a painting I've stepped out of. The late morning sun streaks gold across the glass and warms the silk sleeve of my navy blouse. I smooth an invisible crease, more out of habit than need, and take a slow breath. To the world, I'm Madison Clark, the poised head of a boutique marketing agency that just landed its biggest national account. To the world, I am success wrapped in designer heels and quiet confidence. What they don't see is the hidden scar that hums beneath every compliment, every headline, every handshake. My phone buzzes on the marble desk, a vibration that seems louder than the city horns below. A name I haven't seen in years glows on the screen. Chloe, my younger sister. For a heartbeat, the sound of traffic fades. My chest tightens. I haven't spoken to her since the night I walked out of our parents' house and left the wreckage behind. That night of betrayal still lives like a shard under my skin. The text is brief, almost casual. Maddie, we need to talk. It's about Mom and Dad. The taste of old hurt rises like metal on my tongue. Whatever this is, it's the past knocking, and I'm no longer the woman who runs from it. I can still recall the weight of that night, how the air inside my parents' farmhouse seemed to thicken until it clung to my skin. It was late summer, a storm threatening the horizon, and the smell of rain seeped through the open windows. I'd driven 2 hours after work because Chloe had begged me to come home. She'd sounded small on the phone, but when I arrived, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom and Dad want to talk," she'd whispered, her voice trembling. I followed her into the living room where the soft lamplight pooled over the worn plaid couch. My parents sat there side by side, hands clasped like conspirators. Dad's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the muted TV. Mom kept rubbing a tissue between her palms until it tore. "Madison," Mom started, her voice too sweet, too careful. We need you to be calm." Every muscle in my body went rigid. "Just say it," I replied. Chloe finally looked at me then, her face pale, lips pressed thin. And that's when Mom dropped the bomb. "Chloe is pregnant and," her voice cracked. It's Ryan's." "Ryan." "My husband." For a heartbeat, everything inside me stopped. The ticking clock on the wall, the faint patter of the first raindrops, even the blood in my veins, silent. Then the sound returned all at once. The storm's first rumble, the hiss of my own breath, the sharp crack as my keys slipped from my hand onto the hardwood. I searched Chloe's face for denial, for some kind of frantic no, but she just stared back, eyes wet, guilt heavy as a confession. "How long have you known?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "A while," he muttered. "We thought it best not to upset you until—" "Until what?" The words erupted from me, raw and jagged. "Until the baby shower?" Mom flinched. "Please, Maddie. We didn't want to lose the family over a mistake." A mistake. That single word carved itself into me like glass. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my fingertips. "You chose to protect them," I said, each syllable trembling with fury, "and let me sleep beside a man who—" My voice cracked. I couldn't finish. The storm outside broke in earnest then, rain hammering the windows like the sky itself had chosen sides. I stood there, soaked in betrayal, realizing in one blinding instant that the people I trusted most had already decided who I was to them, someone expendable. I turned on my heel without another word. On the way out, my grandmother's silver locket, still hanging on the hallway hook where I'd left it years ago, caught the light. I grabbed it, a cold, familiar weight against my palm. Grandma used to say, "This will remind you that you're stronger than the storm." That night, I finally understood what she meant. The morning after that storm, I woke in a cheap motel off the interstate, my eyes swollen and my grandmother's silver locket pressed so tightly in my fist it left a half-moon mark in my skin. The neon sign outside flickered vacancy in pink light, a heartbeat I could almost match my breathing to. I stared at the water-stained ceiling and whispered the only promise I could make: I will build a life no one can take from me. The first weeks were a blur of paperwork and numbness, filing for divorce, closing joint accounts, quitting the job where Ryan's friends were colleagues I could no longer face. Each signature felt like a small reclaiming of my own name. I moved to Chicago with 2 suitcases and a savings account that looked more like a bad joke than a safety net. The city swallowed me whole. The metallic screech of the L train, the smell of roasted chestnuts in winter, the endless rush of strangers who didn't know my story and didn't care. I found a room in a worn brick walk-up in Wicker Park and answered every job posting I could find. Most days ended with polite rejections. At night I'd sit cross-legged on the floor, the locket cool against my collarbone, and tell myself tomorrow would crack open something new. It finally did. One gray February afternoon, I stumbled into a community networking event lured only by the promise of free coffee. There I met Janet Whitmore, a seasoned marketing executive with a laugh that could slice through the dullest meeting. She listened, really listened, as I explained how I used to build small campaigns in my last job. "You have an instinct for this," she said, tapping my makeshift portfolio. "Don't let a man or a family define the size of your stage." Janet took a chance on me. She offered freelance projects when no one else would. I worked like a woman possessed. Early mornings drafting taglines, midnight brainstorms that left my laptop warm against my thighs. When self-doubt crept in, what if they're right about me? I'd touch the locket and hear Grandma's voice, stronger than the storm. Months turned to years. Small contracts became larger ones. Late-night ramen dinners turned into celebratory steak lunches. By the 3rd year, I'd launched my own boutique marketing agency. We pitched bold campaigns and won them. I learned how to negotiate fees without flinching, how to dress for boardrooms where my voice once might have quivered. I kept my success quiet. On social media, I posted only sunsets over the lake, a snapshot of coffee on a Monday morning. My parents and Chloe knew nothing beyond the vague, doing well. It was easier that way, no invitations for guilt or reconciliation. Some nights, when the city was hushed and the lake breeze rattled my windows, I'd sit with a locket in my palm and smile at the quiet power in my solitude. The storm that once broke me had become the wind beneath a life no one else controlled. It was a Thursday afternoon when the past finally decided to catch up. I had just wrapped a client call and was reviewing campaign drafts when my assistant buzzed. "Madison, there's a woman here asking for you. Says she's your sister." My pulse flickered. For a heartbeat, the office, its glass walls, the hum of printers, the scent of brewed espresso, felt distant, like I was looking at it through water. "Send her in," I said, my voice steadier than my heart. Chloe stepped inside, carrying the years like a fragile suitcase. Her honey blonde hair, once sunlit and carefree, now had streaks of gray at the temples. She wore a faded cardigan that clung to her frame as if it feared she might vanish. "Hi, Maddie," she said softly, the old nickname landing between us like a pebble in a deep well. Behind her, my assistant lingered for a moment, sensing the weight in the room, before quietly closing the door. "What brings you here?" I asked, folding my arms, not out of anger, but to keep the sudden tremor from showing. Her eyes swept the office. The abstract art splashed across the wall, the glass desk with its neat rows of client files, the fresh white orchids in a crystal vase. The city skyline stretched beyond the windows, a jagged crown of steel and glass. "You've built all this," she whispered. I had no idea. I gave a small, tight smile. "That was the point." She swallowed hard. "Mom and Dad, they're not well. Financially. The farm's barely holding on. They were hoping maybe you could help." A bitter laugh almost escaped me, but I caught it. "Help," I repeated, tasting the word. Chloe's eyes filled. "I know what happened was awful. I know I hurt you. I was 21, scared, and..." She looked down. "I never meant to destroy everything." Memories surged. The storm, the confession, my parents' silent complicity. But I no longer felt the raw ache. It had been replaced by something steadier, clarity. I rose and crossed to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago glowed below, a living map of everything I'd built from the rubble. "You all made a choice," I said, turning back to her. You protected him. You protected each other. And you left me to choke on the truth. Chloe wiped at her eyes. I live with that guilt every day. I came because I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. And because Mom and Dad, they're too proud to ask themselves. For a long moment, silence stretched. Only the soft hum of the HVAC and the distant wail of a siren broke it. Finally, I walked to my desk drawer and pulled out the silver locket. It gleamed in the afternoon sun. Grandma gave me this, I said, letting it dangle between us. She told me I was stronger than the storm. She was right. Chloe's gaze softened, almost reverent. I built this agency from nothing. I continued. I own this entire floor. The national campaign you see on billboards? That's my team's work. I don't need anyone's permission to thrive. Her lips trembled. Maddie, I'm proud of you. For the first time in years, I felt no urge to flinch at her voice. I set the locket back against my heart and met her eyes. I will not fund silence or enable the people who betrayed me. If Mom and Dad want my help, they will face what they did. They will say it out loud and they will apologize. The words hung in the air, firm and unshaken. Chloe nodded slowly, tears streaking her cheeks. I'll tell them, she whispered. I offered no embrace, no easy forgiveness. Only the truth, polished and unyielding, stood between us, and for the first time, it felt like enough. 3 days later, they came. I heard the elevator chime long before my assistant announced them. The quiet shuffle of feet followed, a sound I knew too well. When I stepped into the reception area, my parents stood side by side, looking smaller than I remembered. Dad's broad shoulders had rounded, his plaid shirt hung loose. Mom clutched her handbag like it contained her last ounce of courage. For a fleeting second, a ripple of old tenderness tried to surface, then memory settled it back into silence. Madison, Mom began, voice thin. Chloe told us. Her eyes flicked nervously to the glass walls of my office, where the skyline stretched like a testament to everything they once doubted I could build. Come in, I said. My tone was even, but it carried the finality of a closed door waiting to be opened, only if they deserved it. They sat opposite me at the sleek walnut table. Sunlight poured across the polished surface, catching the silver locket at my throat. I rested a hand on it, letting the cool metal steady me. Dad cleared his throat. We're sorry, he said at last. For everything. For not telling you. For failing you as parents. Mom's eyes filled. We thought we were protecting the family. We were wrong. I let the silence stretch. Their words hovered in the air like fragile glass. I built this life, I said finally, with no help from any of you. I won't deny my roots, but I will not be pulled back into the secrecy that broke me. They both nodded, almost in unison. If you want my help with the farm, I continued, there are conditions. Dad straightened, bracing himself. First, I said, this family stops hiding behind silence. We name what happened, not as gossip but as truth. Chloe and Ryan's betrayal. Your decision to protect them. All of it. Mom swallowed hard, but nodded. Second, I went on. You each find something beyond the farm. A passion, a purpose that isn't built on controlling others. I will fund new beginnings, not old patterns. Dad's brows knitted. Like what? That's for you to discover, I replied. A course, a project, a craft, anything that builds, not buries. Finally, I met their eyes, letting the steel in my voice soften just enough. And third, respect. You will respect the life I've built. No more guilt. No more questioning my choices. I am not the daughter you once thought could be quietly sacrificed. Mom covered her mouth as tears spilled. Dad's gaze dropped his hands, rough from years of farm work. I understand, he said quietly. The weight in the room shifted. Not a victory, not revenge, something steadier. Balance. I will help you, I said at last, but only if you honor these conditions. Because this. I touched the locket, the city skyline gleaming behind me. This is who I am now. And I refuse to lose her. For the first time in years, my parents met my gaze without flinching. The silence that followed wasn't the heavy kind that once drowned me. It was the kind that finally made room for something new. A month later, I stood on the farmhouse porch where everything once shattered. The late autumn air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke. The paint on the railing had begun to peel, but the evening light made even the worn boards glow. Inside, laughter floated from the kitchen, soft, almost hesitant. Mom was showing Dad how to knead bread dough, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. Chloe sat at the table with her little boy, my nephew, helping him stack colored blocks. When I first arrived, the tension was there, a fragile thing. But over the weeks since that meeting in my office, change had begun to take root. My parents had enrolled in a local community workshop, Mom in pottery, Dad in a woodworking class. Chloe, now a single mother, was finishing a certificate in early childhood education. Small steps, but they were steps of their own making. I leaned against the porch post, the silver locket cool against my skin. For years it had been a reminder of the storm I survived. Now it felt like something else, a quiet compass pointing toward the woman I'd become. Chloe appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Hey, Maddie," she said, a shy smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Dinner's almost ready." I searched her face for the sister I'd lost. She wasn't the same, none of us were, but something softer had returned. "I'll be right in," I said. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for giving us this chance to do better." I nodded. "It's not about erasing the past," I said. "It's about making sure we never repeat it." Her eyes shimmered. "I know." As she turned back inside, I watched the sky deepen into shades of lavender and gold. The air carried the distant hum of crickets and the warmth of bread baking. I touched the locket, feeling its familiar weight. Grandma's voice echoed in memory, stronger than the storm. I smiled, the kind of smile that belongs to someone who has walked through fire and come out whole. "My storm," I whispered to the dusk, "was the making of me." And with that, I stepped inside, not to forget, but to live in a truth I had finally claimed as my own.